Bienvenue dans ce sommet international, plutôt anglophone, mais je serai une des alternatives francophones. Nous sommes tout de même en France, il ne faut pas l'oublier. La période de Covid nous a confrontés aux pertes de médicaments, aux pertes de stock de médicaments, et nous ont montré effectivement que le médicament était aussi complémentaire que la chirurgie, que les interventions non médicamenteuses, complémentaires à une santé qui se veut de plus en plus être une médecine aux 4 P, qui est personnalisée, préventive, prédictive et participative, d'une participation active des patients qui sont sur le terrain et qui peut nous échanger leur expérience. C'est ce à quoi va s'atteler notre prochaine oratrice, puisqu'elle pense peut-être devoir parler en anglais. Je vais donc vous la présenter en anglais. I'm very proud and we are honored to introduce Mrs. WILHELM Emmanuelle. She's a physician, neuroscientist, advisor and science communicator, challenging outdated systems and amplifying patient voices, bridging medicine, science, technique, and human nuance in 7 languages, and L'Oréal UNESCO awardee. She's coming from Hospital University of California, Berkeley, and also the CSU Madrid, and I knew her as one of the member of our scientific committee in the Belgian Association Parkinson. And maybe you can come with this. The floor is yours. And the title is, in French, Crise de confiance, comment les interventions non médicamenteuses renforçant le pouvoir d'agir des patients et rétablissant le lien humain dans les soins de santé, enseignements tirés de la maladie de Parkinson. Et donc, il s'agit bien là, c'est de la science and practice dans le plus grand humanisme qui nous caractérise. Merci.
Je peux juste dire ici comment on avance les slides. Alors, effectivement, je m'excuse, je prévois de faire ma présentation en anglais parce que je parle plutôt bien français, mais j'ai plus l'habitude de parler dedans, donc je cherche parfois un petit peu mes mots, donc j'espère que vous ne m'en voudrez pas. On peut toujours poser les questions à la fin en français, mais voilà, j'ai préparé tout ça en anglais. C'est un sujet qui me tient énormément à cœur et j'en ai parlé beaucoup ces dernières années avec les patients, des collègues, avec la population générale et j'espère représenter leur voix correctement ici aujourd'hui. Alors moi, je suis une plutôt jeune pousse, donc j'ai pas du tout le curriculum de notre précédent orateur. Moi, j'ai étudié la médecine à l'UC Louvain, à Bruxelles, et j'ai commencé un doctorat en neurosciences. En même temps que j'ai commencé mon assistanat en neurologie. Et en fait, ça m'a posé dans une position extrêmement favorable parce que de un côté, je voyais les patients parkinsoniens, surtout, mais aussi des troubles du mouvement à l'hôpital, sous le paradigme plutôt classique, consultation rapide, prescription de médicaments, mais je passais énormément d'heures et je le fais encore avec eux dans le laboratoire. Ce qui veut dire que voilà, j'ai pu écouter beaucoup de craintes, j'ai pu faire beaucoup d'éducation et j'ai vraiment senti ce besoin des interventions non médicamenteuses. C'est pas juste mon chemin mon chemin de santé personnelle qui m'a amené là. Et moi, je travaille encore à Madrid dans un centre de recherche qui est dédié à la maladie de Parkinson, une très belle équipe. Et j'ai découvert la NPIS il y a 1 an et je dois vous dire que c'était une bouffée d'air fraîche parce qu'il y a énormément de jeunes médecins, beaucoup de jeunes femmes qui demandent ce genre d'intervention dans notre pratique. Et voilà, j'ai aussi créé mon petit projet récemment que j'appelle The Nuance Neuro parce qu'il y a beaucoup de jeunes scientifiques et médecins qui cherchent un petit peu une voie ou communiquer voilà les choses qui vont pas selon nous dans le système de soins de santé et parfois c'est plus facile de le faire en dehors des institutions. Donc voilà. I'm going to switch to English, so no problem to do the presentation. To do the questions later in French. So when I see campaigns like that, my heart breaks. This is a campaign that I saw in Malaga a few months ago. It says, hopefully a vaccine against aggressions. Your doctor is there to look after you, not to defend himself. Don't attack him, don't threaten him. It's a crime. When I see campaigns like that, I said my heart breaks because I see a lot of suffering from both sides, from the general population, because if you're not suffering and if you have not lost trust in your healthcare professionals, you don't aggress them. And this is an extreme additional burden on the healthcare professionals. And so I think we can absolutely agree that there is an openly increasing lack of trust in medical and scientific professionals and institutions. And on the other side of the consultation tables, we have more and more doctors, also young doctors in the initial stages of the training, that are burning out, that are considering already quitting the profession before it has fully started. And if you think I'm being a bit overly dramatic, there's so much research on that. So this is not a phenomenon that is limited to the US, because we hear a lot of news these days about the United States, a lot about vaccine debates, but it goes far beyond that if you look a bit into the literature. So for instance, there's a study on 40,000 European citizens in 38 countries. They show that roughly a third of them overall holds one anti-science or conspirational belief. Of course, it's very different from one country to another. So, for instance, a country like Denmark will largely be against these beliefs, whereas to the east of Europe, it increases. It's linked to your scientific literature, the news sources that you consume, to the richness of the country, etc. But overall, this is an increasing problem. And there's a global survey in 144 countries that included, I think, 150,000 citizens that shows that less than 50% of the citizens still have a high level of trust in their doctors and nurses, and that even less of them trust the advice of the doctors or of the health institution. So I think it's safe to say that we have a problem and that it's not necessarily going into the right directions. The numbers for young professionals, depending on what definition you use for burnouts, the percentages change. It also depends on the countries, it depends on the specialties, but it is a major problem. Doctors complain about emotional exhaustion, about depersonalization, a lack of feeling like professional accomplishment. And so many of them are already considering quitting the profession or leaving the hospital. And I think it's really time to openly address and talk about these matters. Patients feel that often in the consultation room, it's a rushed monologue. Doctors feel undervalued, and we sometimes tend to forget that we are all in the same story. So the patients and the doctors were both suffering from the way the system is built, and I think it's a very important point. I shared this article on LinkedIn 6 years ago, and I'm mentioning this because I realized that it took me 5 to 6 years to act and speak on this, and I already felt 6 years ago a resonance with this article and that there is a problem. Eric Topol, super famous cardiologist, a big science communicator, he wrote this article where he said that the modern medicine requires from us that we do more than just seeing patients. Doctors are burned out. Doctors have incredible administrative burden, but there's also a lack of, let's say, a unity or an association that regroups them all, that actually makes them understand we all share similar frustrations, and that l'union fait la force. If we work together, we can actually, us as well as healthcare professionals, do something about this. And he also advocates for doctors joining more patient-centered associations to really show the patients that we stand on their side. We want longer consultations. We want more humane interactions with them. And if we don't speak up, if we don't join associations that are more patient-centered, it's also a way of losing trust. Of course, a lot of doctors seem to place a lot of hope in the arrival of AI, and that with new software arriving in the consultation room, we will have more time to face the patient and not our screen. What Eric Topol also already mentioned in his article 6 years ago is that, yes, these software development is important, but the doctors should be also part of the development. And fear that this could be a tool that will just push for more productivity from the doctors. So it can be a double-edged sword. So all of that to say that doctors are just waking up slowly to the fact that they have to do maybe more than just see patients. The patients, they have taken action already a long time ago. They have turned their frustrations into actions. I have talked to many of them. They're patient advocates. They either do PhDs on their diseases, they become entrepreneurs, they become influencers. And what is super interesting to see is that a lot of these patients that actually have young onset Parkinson's disease, so it means they have been diagnosed before the age of 50, 40, or even 30, they are strong endorsers of non-pharmacological interventions. So they really have understood that non-pharmacological interventions are an operating system for them, for their agency, for their empowerment. And so I think we have a lot to learn in the implementation of ENMs, of NPIs, from the patients. So Parkinson's disease, if you didn't know it yet, is the fastest growing neurological and neurodegenerative disease in the world. There's currently 13 million people affected. This is expected to double within the next 25 years, and we already have roughly 500,000 people with young onset Parkinson's disease. Young onset Parkinson's disease, of course, it means you will live a long time with a complex disease that needs complex care. We'll talk a bit more about this in a second. So Parkinson's disease is linked to degeneration of dopaminergic neurons and deep structures of the brain. I don't know if I have a pointer here. Yeah, so you can see here in the substantia nigra, so it's a region deep in the brain, like a control subject. He will have like this black area because it's pigmented dopaminergic neurons that are still there, while a Parkinson patient just lost the majority of the neurons in that area. And so this leads to a large array of symptoms, motor symptoms, non-motor symptoms. And we often say that there's as many Parkinson's diseases as there are Parkinson's patients, because they don't have a uniform set of symptoms, they don't have a uniform evolution, so it's a disease that needs an extremely personalized approach. And there's no unique cause, so it's an interaction of genetic and environmental risk factors. And the treatments today are not disease modifying. We don't have in the clinic anything that stops disease process, but we have dopamine replacement therapy. Of course, we have to substitute them with dopamine. It's not a question. Sometimes they need to go to surgery, but our field is also slowly starting to wake up to the needs of non-pharmacological interventions, and that makes me very happy. So Parkinson's disease, as you can see here, has a super long evolution. This is in time. The moment that we do the diagnosis, it's typically when patients have tremor or rigidity, but you can see that the neurodegenerative process often already started 10 to 20 years before. And you see that over time, the motor symptoms that are here at the top of the graph, they have complication, it goes worse over time. But also you see this whole array of non-motor symptoms. So you have sleep disorders, depression, anxiety, constipation, fatigue, pain, apathy. So, it's absolutely obvious that patients with Parkinson's disease completely fall within the realm of non-pharmacological interventions. They need physical, they need nutritional and psychosocial help in their treatment. This is a beautiful representation of in a big review that came out a few years ago that actually places the patient at the center of this graph. And around you see all the specialties, the professions that actually ideally should be included in the treatment for Parkinson's disease. So it means not only the neurologist or the GP, but also dietitian, speech-language therapist, physical therapist, etc. So these things are the cornerstone of a good treatment of Parkinson's disease. And so here you see that patients, of course, they need to take their dopamine. They sometimes need to go to surgery. But in order to get to the definition of what we call health in 2025, which is the capacity to adapt and to self-manage in the physical realm, the mental realm, the social realm, they actually also need multidisciplinary care. They need to be educated and informed and engaged in their treatment. So we're really waking up to the fact that this is an absolute cornerstone of their treatment. I don't want to go too much into the details of all the non-pharmacological interventions that are scientifically validated in Parkinson's disease, because that could be a presentation on its own. There's a lot of evidence for exercise, for physiotherapy, for mind-body therapies, etc. I'm very happy to talk with you about this more afterwards, because there's varying evidence for the different types of symptoms. So I mean, this all needs to be a bit nuanced, but overall exercise highly validated. And I think the most important thing is to say that we agree that they need to have integrated care with a multimodal approach, an individualized approach that combines exercise, mind, body, and targeted therapies for them to be at their best. The issue is, despite the beautiful theory, despite everything that we know today, still, and even in the rich countries, only a minority of people with Parkinson's disease have an access to non-pharmacological interventions, to truly multidisciplinary care. And it's a pity, and I'm trying to advocate for this more and more. I'm contacting patients. I ask them, how can we help? How can we change this? Because it's so blatantly obvious that this needs to be more developed, but somehow it's still blocking quite a bit. And I want to mention here the Parkinson Net, which is an originally Dutch organization or a project that emerged, where they want to bring together all the therapists in Parkinson's disease, the neurologists, train the patients themselves to actually create a strong network of reference to implement this multidisciplinary care, to implement in a science-backed way all these non-pharmacological interventions. I don't have the numbers here, but they actually also show that through initiatives like the Parkinson Net, they allow to save a lot of money. I think at the level of Holland, they saved like 20 million over. I don't have the exact number here, so but they did save an immense amount of money by going about this in a very organized way. And just to come back to our patients and how we can learn so incredibly much from them in the realm of non-pharmacological interventions. For instance, here, Richelle, she's like a superstar of patient advocates. She's a dietitian by training, and she has developed an app that's called My Moves Matter, in which she focuses especially on the nutritional aspect because of her training. So it's important to note here that they just give advice in the area that they're actually super trained in, which I highly appreciate, to find a way to guide patients in the nutritional aspects, because I also want to be very honest, we're as doctors not very well trained in non-pharmacological interventions. We do tell them how to take their medication as compared to the meals, but that's basically where it stops. So I have the humility to say that I was never really trained in non-pharmacological interventions, and that is already a big problem. This is a super interesting paper that just came out, and it absolutely shows that we're going in the right direction with the NPIS. So basically, under the supervision of Bas Bloem, who's one of the biggest researchers and doctors in Parkinson's disease in the world, so he's the initiator of the Parkinson net that I just mentioned, they came up with a paper, it's a review, so it's qualitative data, in which they integrate like 3 cornerstones or 3 pillars to look at all the different treatments that exist out there in Parkinson's disease. So they have on the x-axis 2 of the criteria, which are the scientific rationale and the scientific evidence. Rational meaning, like, even if we don't have evidence-based research yet, would it make sense to investigate this? Would that make scientific sense? Let's study it. And then, of course, the evidence is like the peer-reviewed paper and evidence-based medicine that is out there already. But also, they take into account the patient perspective. They say it's the 3rd pillar because sometimes patients, so if you see here in the extremely low credible zone, there's treatments that are like taken on by patients, not because they're super credible, but because they are used by other patients. And there is this form of, this community feeling of like, if some of my friends, some of the other patients tell me this works, I want to use this, and I don't care about the science. And so you can see here towards the other end of the spectrum, high credibility in the NPI realm, things like exercise. And of course, there's also a high chance of the treatment being accepted because patients know that exercise is super important when they experience it themselves. So here, that was the reaction of one of the advocates on LinkedIn in this case. And I found it very interesting. We're not going to read the whole text, but she mentioned that she's very happy that we're moving away from the term alternative therapies, because she said, we're all using them. We have to call them complementary therapies. And she says, like, we're looking to each other as patients. Sometimes we don't care about the science because you doctors, you scientists, you go too slowly. And I think it's really, for me personally, a wake-up call to see, like, I want to push as much as I can to really start looking into these non-pharmacological interventions, because we know the patients are screaming for them. And I find it very interesting because with the NPIS model, all of that has already been like addressed, thought about. And so when we go back to, anyhow, the graph that was there 2 slides ago, this credibility spectrum, we're shyly and timidly going in that direction. And what I'm trying to do now is to bridge a bit this very scientific group of people with the NPIS that has a super scientific approach on non-pharmacological interventions, and create some symbiosis there, because we have to push also as doctors and therapists for this. We're getting slowly towards the end. Bas Bloem is the researcher that I mentioned before. He already, like 14 years ago, I think, did this TED Talk that I recommend you all watch, that he called From God to Guide, so that we as doctors should descend from our pedestal, should descend from our ivory tower and become a guide and a coach in the life of patients. And it's called participatory healthcare. And it's super important to know that these people are superstars for the patients. If you, as a doctor, go on board with them, you support, you hear them, you tell them that you understand their need and their ask to look into non-pharmacological interventions, it becomes a very horizontal teamwork where, like, trust is not even a question anymore. And so I wanted to propose a little, very simple diagram. This doesn't come from the literature. Basically, with the idea that, because what also a lot of people in the healthcare system complain about, for instance, when you talk to pharmacists, they say, like, the patients come to the pharmacy, they just hand me the prescription. They have no idea what was talked about in the consultation. They ask to have everything explained again. They don't know what's going on. It's a very paternalistic, top-down way of treating them. And that's a problem. And here I see the beauty of non-pharmacological interventions, because if you, I don't know, implement a protocol Otago, which is a prevention protocol for elderly people to prevent falls, you have to educate them. You have to dialogue with them. There is no way that the patients don't have an idea of what is going on. You already have to talk with them to choose the protocol. You have to educate them. You spend time with them. And so we have to also bring back in the therapeutic alliance a way to make patients active again, to involve them, and not just in a 20-minute consultations tell them, do this, don't do this, and ciao, bye, see you in six months. So I think the non-pharmacological interventions have an incredible potential to, again, open dialogue. We are not against drugs. I'm not against drugs. Every Parkinson's patients need dopamine replacement therapy, but I think inherently non-pharmacological interventions, since they ask of patients to become active, to acquire skills in their health, that in that way we raise the patient activation again, that we teach them self-efficacy, and that inherently strengthens the therapeutic alliance, because as doctors, that's what we think we do when we study medicine. We want to have a humanistic, beautiful experience afterwards with patients and not be rushed through 15 minutes consultation. So I think, honestly, for me, non-pharmacological interventions are the cornerstone of where the healthcare system should go. And these are my messages. I mean, it's a bit hard to synthesize this all in a few points, but in terms of non-pharmacological interventions, I say listen to the patients, listen to the therapists, listen to the people that spend often so much more time with the patients than us, and learn and fight for it. For me, NPIs have to become an active part of the core care that will deliver Parkinson's patients. Of course, using a structured model like the NPIS model is the key. Funding. I think it was already talked about a lot today. We need to fund the research, we need to fund the training, and I am also wondering if we have to start thinking of new professional roles, because the way that doctors give their care today, they don't have time to sit in a 1-hour consultation and to dialogue around non-pharmacological interventions, even if they would love to. And so yeah, maybe we also have to start thinking of roles like health coach. Personally, I would be very interested in doing something like that. We already talked about it. So yeah, and I think that's it. Humility, humanity, and yeah, patients are our biggest teachers, and I hope we can build with them the healthcare system that we want to go for. That's it.
Merci pour cet intéressant échange et le temps respecté. Nous avons 5 minutes pour quelques questions. Ce qui est intéressant ici, me semble-t-il, c'est que les médecins qui étaient auparavant réputés pour ne pas s'intéresser, ou en tout cas s'écarter de toute intervention médicamenteuse, montrent effectivement qu'ici sont intéressés parce qu'ils ne savent pas faire autrement. Les INM sont utilisés par le tout public depuis très longtemps, et c'est à nous, en fait, effectivement, de participer à cette modification de l'organigramme de la santé, qui n'est plus un organigramme pyramidal qui place le médecin au-dessus, mais un réseau, où le médecin reste au centre parce qu'il prend la responsabilité du diagnostic et du traitement, mais que tous les autres intervenants dont nous sommes, dont vous êtes, vont pouvoir intervenir à la question « Comment est-ce que je peux aider le patient ?» en détectant précocement, non pas la maladie, qui n'est qu'un outil, mais les signes de dépassement qui vont nous faire poser la question « Comment est-ce que je peux aider dans ma science et dans une certaine interdisciplinarité ?» Ce qui est assez intéressant aussi ici, c'est qu'on pose le questionnement de ce qu'est une maladie chronique. En fait, toutes les maladies sont chroniques, il n'y a rien d'aigu. Même lorsque vous présentez un stroke, un accident vasculaire cérébral, dans 30, 40, 50% des cas parfois, il est annoncé par des accidents ischémiques transitoires. Donc, tout se prépare. D'où l'intérêt des INM pour toute la période, effectivement, préventive, mais aussi, quelque part, prédictive, puisque nous y participons aussi avec les autres parties des neurosciences, avec la génétique, etc.
Oui, bonjour. Donc, merci déjà beaucoup pour votre présentation. Je suis médecin psychiatre et ça fait du bien d'entendre d'autres médecins parler de cette manière-là avec humilité et puis déjà d'être dans le dialogue avec les patients et pas être juste prescripteur. Moi, j'avais la question surtout sur quand vous adressez les personnes pour des INM. Est-ce que ce sont des protocoles qui sont dans le service? Est-ce que vous les adressez vers d'autres structures, des personnes en libéral, etc.?
Alors ça, c'est un grand problème. Donc, parfois, on veut faire la meilleure des choses. On est tout à fait lucide sur le fait qu'il faut relayer les patients vers d'autres thérapeutes et créer ce réseau s'il n'existe pas encore. Et ça, c'est extrêmement compliqué. Donc, je pense que on devrait tous aller vers quelque chose comme le Parkinson Net, où on a une liste d'adresses. On peut aller sur un site internet, on voit il y a tel et tel thérapeute, tel diététicien, tel physiothérapeute, tel logopède, etc. Parce que moi, quand je consultais à Saint-Luc à Bruxelles, je vous dis pas les difficultés que j'ai eues juste pour trouver un kiné qui était un petit peu spécialisé dans les maladies neurologiques. Je dis même pas la maladie de Parkinson. Donc c'était à chaque fois, je dirais, une bataille pour moi, essayer de trouver ces thérapeutes. Donc il n'y avait pas de structure préexistante. Et moi, par rapport à la formation sur les INM, je veux dire, c'est des trucs qu'on doit apprendre à côté. Donc moi-même, je suis en train de me former pour savoir un peu plus quels sont effectivement les INM basés sur les preuves. Donc je suis en plein apprentissage dedans aussi, et malheureusement, voilà, je travaille en Espagne, je peux vous dire, voilà, il n'y a pas vraiment un grand réseau pour relayer les patients vers des thérapeutes dans le Parkinson. Donc, honnêtement, moi, je pense que tout est encore à créer, en tout cas dans beaucoup de pays d'Europe. Et voilà, juste centraliser et s'inspirer sur le modèle du Parkinson Net, voire essayer d'aider à l'étendre à travers les pays. Je sais qu'ils sont déjà au Luxembourg. Par exemple, Luxembourg a un bon réseau Parkinson, beaucoup de moyens. Petit pays, c'est plus facile à implémenter, mais malheureusement, j'ai pas de réponse à vous donner parce que j'ai pas encore trouvé la structure qui fonctionne. Je vous dis, parfois ça bug même juste pour trouver un bon kiné. Donc,
même en Belgique, il y a tout de même quelques organigrammes qui sont mis en place. Le tout, c'est de constituer un réseau, non pas de professionnels, mais de personnes qui sont capables de prendre en charge une méthode. C'est bien le but du NPIS. Donc, on ne prône pas l'intérêt d'avoir un kiné, un ergothérapeute, un ostéopathe, un réflexologue, mais on prône l'intérêt d'avoir dans le réseau des personnes qui, dans leur art, peuvent prendre en charge une méthode de travail qui va répondre aux questionnements. Vous avez quel problème? On vous propose cette méthode. Qui peut réaliser cette méthode? Avec quelle efficacité? Et quelle remise en question structurée liée à la science? Et qui donc sera beaucoup plus efficace au long cours. Parce que le problème qui se pose actuellement, c'est que tout le monde fait de tout. Et nous arrivons finalement à dévaloriser les INM parce qu'effectivement, il n'y a pas de méthode. Donc dans la NPIS, je pense qu'on a souvent parlé, on prône la méthode plutôt que la profession. Et donc là, chacun constitue son organigramme. Et en Belgique, nous avons un vaste réseau à ce niveau-là qui se met en place progressivement à partir de l'association Parkinson belge. Effectivement. Je pense que nous n'avons plus de temps pour d'autres questions, mais si vous avez une question sauvage, nous sommes toujours prêts à prendre. Oui, madame. Ce sera la dernière, peut-être. Merci.
Je suis le président du syndicat du thermalisme en France. Et je suis très intéressé, madame, par votre présentation, car depuis 20 ans, pour maintenir le remboursement des cures thermales en France, nous avons fait des études Et je dois vous dire qu'en ce moment, nous sommes encore malmenés pour des problèmes de grandes difficultés économiques de la France et de l'assurance maladie. Alors, ce que je voulais vous dire, c'est ce que je ressens, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, les choses évoluent, mais très très lentement. Et nous prenons en charge des patients qui ont 60, 65 ans, qui souffrent de maladies chroniques, donc qui disent des maladies inguérissables. Et la grande majorité de nos curistes nous disent qu'après 3 semaines de cure, la plupart ne prennent plus de traitement, ou s'ils en prennent, ils ont énormément réduit, ils diminuent leur consommation de biens de santé et ils retrouvent, pour ceux qui ont des problèmes de mobilité, une plus grande aisance physique et surtout une très forte amélioration de la qualité de vie. Et je crois qu'il est primordial de soutenir ce genre de médecine comme vous venez de l'appliquer pour des problèmes de neurologie. Nous, c'est un spectre beaucoup plus large, mais voilà ce que je voulais dire. C'est pas vraiment une question, c'est plus une information sur ce que des traitements non médicamenteux peuvent apporter, si vous voulez, aujourd'hui à des patients. Ça marche très bien aussi en Europe. J'étais jusqu'à la semaine dernière président du syndicat européen du thermalisme et je peux vous assurer que dans certains pays européens, ils vont même beaucoup plus loin que ce que nous faisons en France. Voilà.
Peut-être, si je peux juste dire une toute dernière chose, c'est effectivement, il faut aussi que beaucoup plus de médecins commencent à parler sur ça. Parce que nous, on est un petit peu tellement... on se sent parfois un petit peu muselé, on se préoccupe tellement de ce que nos pères pensent de nous. Si on critique un petit peu le système et comment se font les choses, en fait, on n'avance pas. Donc, il faut aussi que les médecins qui sont d'accord avec ce genre de discours que je viens de tenir s'associent, se connaissent et portent ce message vers l'extérieur. C'est ce que je disais avec Win the Information Battle. On doit aussi communiquer beaucoup plus publiquement sur ça, parce que je pense on peut être des grands moteurs de l'implémentation des INM, mais on doit devenir un peu plus vocaux là-dessus. Voilà.